Hey guys, MrPokke here, back with another video, and on today's CN Pooling Opinions, we are going to be taking a look at the version 3.3 update that just dropped featuring Hyacine, Cipher, the two rerun banners being Aglaea as well as The Herta, right? So without further ado, let's get into today's content, and jumping straight into it itself, first of all, being Hyacine, she is going to be our first ever version 3 sustain, being a HP summon Mimo Sprite sustain featuring E-card, right? Early access for Hyacine is going to be coming very soon on Wednesday, so stay tuned as we take it to a deeper dive into the kit itself. But from what we've seen from the live stream, her skill and ultimate both summons E-card and heals our entire team, whereas for the ultimate, it increases the max HP for our entire team as well. And then for E-card itself, it bases damage from the amount of HP healed by Hyacine and E-card. So the more we heal, the more damage that E-card itself is going to do. And when allies lose HP, E-card will heal them instantly by consuming its own HP. So the main gimmick tied to Hyacine and E-card is essentially that you want to heal your entire team as fast as possible, and then the amount of healing would be, as you guys would have guessed it, the best synergizers with the current version 3 big boy DPS castorice, right? Because she does have the potential to generate the fastest amount of new buff for castorice, because she both has the heals for the entire team as well as the consumption of HP from E-card itself. On top of that, it's gonna be a heal that is AoE and not single target, so she's not gonna be restricted by the 12% cap for every single new buff in an individual allies, right? So afterwards, the supplementary 4-stars are gonna be Misha, Saval, as well as Natasha, which frankly speaking doesn't really matter that much at all. So when it comes to the overall verdict for castorice means, especially for castorice means that do not have a single limited sustain, she's gonna be a 10 out of 10 pool. Otherwise, if you guys are not gonna be playing castorice, she's actually just gonna be a roughly 6 out of 10, because CM believes that Hyacine as a sustain is perfectly tailor-made for castorice, being the most synergistic sustain and even support that will be above every other sustain we have been getting ever since version 1. And the reason why she also doubles the support is because castorice herself as a unit, when you give her heals, it not just provides us with the sustain to keep us alive, but it also gives her additional new buff generation on top of the HP percentage, which means that she can technically deal even more damage as she can summon Pollux a little bit faster. So for the sustain slot specifically for castorice, don't look at it as just as pulling a simple sustain, it is also doubling as another support plus sustain for a castorice team. On top of that, we also know that E-card itself, it also deals a pretty substantial, potentially a substantial amount of damage, because the healing is gonna be tied to the amount of damage dealt, right? So as you can see over here, when Hyacine summons E-card, that means there's going to be one additional unit for castorice HP drain, and because it is an AoE team heal, it will not hit the 12% max cap. And lastly, with the self-burn HP plus heals plus HP regeneration and the HP increase, it is going to be the perfect synergy for castorice. And the reason why unfortunately she's only going to be a 6 out of 10 for non-castorice players is because there are some concerns with Hyacine's flexibility alongside other DPS archetypes, specifically for example My Day and Blade, which are also HP scaling DPS. So all of our other DPS that we have right now, especially if you're a player that already put for the previous limited sustains such as Adventuring, Lingsha, Huo, Fu Xuan, you can pretty much suffice with any of these old sustains, because sustains themselves, they don't really deal that much utility or damage unless you're going to be talking about it from a support angle, right? And most of the time, if you want to just deal the highest amount of damage anyways, you would be opting for a 3+1 hyper carry angle, and you wouldn't even run sustain in the first place. This is different from castorice, because castorice would be pretty much permanently tied to running a sustain with a team to increase her survivability as well as the rate in which you can summon Pollux, right? So a concern with, for example, My Day is that My Day needs a strong single target heal, because he is going to be the guy that's going to be consuming all of his HP, getting the taunt value, letting the enemy hit him. So all the heals should be directly focused on My Day, and as such, an AoE team-wide heal might not be enough for just My Day specifically. And then for another example like Blade and TBH My Day as well, both of them want to burn their own HP and not their teammates' HP. So even though E-card burns its own HP when it is healing an ally, if this HP burn was actually transferred to Blade or My Day, this could have resulted in a little bit more synergy, since Blade wants to get a little bit more stacks and My Day does gain the charge to activate the God Slayer. So unfortunately, it will not be as synergistic as compared to a DPS such as castorice, and as such, because we are going to be pulling for a sustain, in terms of an overall utility or an increase in damage potential, a sustain will always never come close to a value provided by support, a sub DPS, or even a vertical investment for the DPS themselves, such as their E1 or their signature icons, right? So with that, that is going to be Hyacine's overall verdict. Alright, moving on to Cipher, that is going to be our follow-up attack plus debuffer sub DPS. So Cipher's gimmick is basically storing the total damage dealt by allies on a fixed target marked by her special mark to unleash a follow-up attack with debuffs true damage, and personal DPS all combined into a single kit. So for skill, it's gonna be a destruction-based targeting with one main target and two adjacent target. For ultimate, it's gonna be a single target burst and use the damage stored by her talent to deal true damage to the main target as well as the adjacent target. So you can kind of think of this as like an additional. It's almost as if her entire kit is like an additional damage multiplier, where whatever damage the team is going to be dealing, she's basically going to be providing it almost a duplicate, but only when she's released can we see how much is this damage going to become when she's out, right? And then for her talent, it's going to be applying a mark as a debuff and can be moved with a skill on ultimate. It records all the damage dealt to the marked enemies by our allies as well as launching a follow-up attack. So Cipher's kit is both debuffs and damage packed into one, and the idea is to basically mark on a single target, preferably the main target or the boss, and act as like another source of damage once the ultimate is going to be casted to greatly increase the single target damage received within that specific team comp, right? So it's going to be very, very good for Akron and her weaker single target performance that we've seen in version 3. And Fei Xiao, as well as maybe even castorice, which they've shown in the live stream, may also have a potential depending on the debuffs as well as the stack generation. For the supplementary 4 stars, they are going to be Qingque, Xue Yi, as well as Shu Shang. So the overall verdict for Cipher, for Akron mains, especially for Akron mains that do not have Jiao Qiu, she's going to be an 8 out of 10. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit questionable, and we're going to be explaining why. So for CN, they believe that Cipher is built to bridge the gap for the version 2 emulator of Self-Annihilation Akron to catch up with the version 3 DPS archetypes, addressing 2 of her potential biggest weaknesses we've seen so far, which is going to be number 1, the single target damage, because Akron's ultimate is going to be dealing a lot of damage numbers, but most of them are going to be spread out within multiple targets, which leads to the point where the single target wouldn't have that much of a multiplier compared to our version 3 archetypes. And another weakness being the stack generation, because if you're not going to be, especially for players that are not going to be running Jiao Qiu, Cipher may or may not be enough to give us enough stacks, but that also depends if she's going to be getting any additional debuffs, because from the way her kit works, it looks like she does damage, she has true damage, she applies the mark, but whether or not she has any other debuffs from like her follow-up attack or her base attack frequency, that will be dependent on whether or not she herself has access to it, and she's not going to be generating enough stacks, then the main gimmick would be to address Akron's single target damage issue, right? For Cipher herself, she also does show a lot of potential with Fei Xiao, depending on her follow-up attack frequency, because combining this with her personal damage as well as debuffs, it may or may not outshine Topaz, Han March 7th, and Mose, but all of these will ultimately depend on the multipliers, right? Also keep in mind for Fei Xiao, she is also very capable of just running a 3+1 DPS archetype, unlike for example castorice, who definitely needs a Hyacine or he needs a sustain slot within the entire team, right? So for all of these other DPSs like Akron, your Fei Xiao, because of the ability to basically vertically invest in the 3+1 archetype, having these kind of support slot DPSs, it really comes down to the question of do they provide enough utility to justify a pool, or are our current team archetypes already ready, especially with the upcoming version 3.4 banners that's looking to be very stacked, right? A very important thing to note for Cipher is that her banner is on the second half of 3.3, which means that by the time 3.4 is coming out, we are able to see the 3.4 dev livestream, which will be going through Finon, the Fate Collab, as well as the rework units being Kafka, Blade, Jingliu, as well as Silver Wolf. Silver Wolf being the most important key here, because Silver Wolf, she was the original first ever 5-star Nihility debuffer. So if a Silver Wolf rework shows a lot of potential, that to the point where they can even match Cipher's kit or maybe Jiao Qiu's kit, then players may want to hold off on Cipher in anticipation for the Fate Collab, especially if they already have Silver Wolf from the last time, right? So that is pretty much going to be it for our 2 new units. And then jumping into the reruns, we are taking a look at Herta as well as Aglaea. The overall verdict for both banners is basically only for vertical investment, because they are both DPS banners, which can be pretty appealing for the previous Herta as well as Aglaea owners looking to pull for an E1, looking to pull for an E2, or a signature icon. But if you are considering on pulling these DPS units at a baseline E0 S0, then it may not have that much value, seeing how many DPS banners has already come out in version 3. You can take a look at your Herta. Outside of Herta and Aglaea, you have Maide, you have castorice, to a certain extent, and Anaxa could be a main DPS even. We're going to be getting Finon, there's going to be Fate, right? So a lot of DPS banners are coming out within the near future, right? And then outside from this, if you are thinking about it from a vertical investment standpoint, Herta E2 is going to be a lot stronger. In fact, one or if not the strongest item 2, probably only outmatched by castorice E2. So if you guys are going to be Herta mains, which she's also an emulator, an E2 Herta could be a potential investment over here, stronger than Aglaea's E1 at least in that regard. And in terms of signature light cone, Herta's signature light cone also holds a little bit more value than Aglaea's signature light cone, because Herta herself as a unit just tends to scale a little bit better, since she does scale vertically with all of her best in stock team comps not even fully addressed yet, whereas Aglaea sort of already peaked back in version 3.0, right? So if players already missed out on all of the DPS banners, so this is especially pertaining to the new players, you guys just started playing in version 3.3 in preparation for the Fate Collab banner coming up in version 3.4, then the Herta will be an excellent starting point for early to mid-game players as you pivot into 3.4. In fact, between all of the banners right now of Hyacine, Cipher, Herta, as well as Aglaea, if you are a brand new player just fresh starting to HSR, a DPS banner will always hold the highest value for any early game beginners, because having a brand new sustain or a brand new sub DPS, they will never really help you clear all of the early game content as much as compared to a proper limited 5-star DPS, right? And for Herta, she is also extremely cheap and efficient. You can just run her with a 4-star Herta, run her with a Remembrance Trailblazer and a Gallagher, and this team is pretty much more or less good to go, even though you have no access to any limited 5-stars, right? So that's gonna be for the beginner players looking to start into honkaistarrail in this recent patch. And do keep in mind, after all these being said and done in version 3.3, do note that the next banner in 3.4, in my opinion, is the actual real banner coming out for Honkai Starbucks, and that is gonna be the first ever collaboration between Archer as well as Saber for the HSRX Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works collab, right? And in overall summary, if you are going to be needing a limited sustain for a castorice main, then you should be able to get Hyacine. Otherwise, if you really want to go for vertical investment for Aggron teams or potentially face out teams, you can look for Cipher, but wait until they announce the Silver Wolf buffs first, right? So a couple of potential winners. For Hyacine, like I mentioned, she's basically perfectly tailor-made for castorice, and being this perfectly tailor-made for a single unit means that she's often at times not going to be as flexible if you want to run her into the other team comps outside of the specific niche, right? Which may not even be that bad of a thing, because even if you're not going to be that flexible, as long as this one team that you build is going to be very strong and can clear all of the endgame content, then there shouldn't be any problems, even if she's not going to be able to be ran with all the DPS team comps, right? So that's for Hyacine. And then for Cipher, like I mentioned, if the Silver Wolf buffs are very strong, or maybe not put her to a stronger version of Cipher, but on a equal caliber, because at the end of the day, especially if players already put Silver Wolf last time, you can technically just use this reworked Silver Wolf to get you guys through and wait for the 3.4 collab banner and then see if we get a rerun in the future to look into further vertical investments for Aggron or even face out, right? So your face out, you can technically still work your version 2 teams. It's basically more or less complete, or you could do a vertical 3+1 hyper carry DPS. And I do want to end off this entire video by stressing this very important thing, right? Fate collab, fate collab, fate collab. This Fate collab is gonna be the only true limited banner for any gacha games, and if you guys are gonna be chasing meta, feel free to ignore the Fate collab. You can just skip Saber, but at the end of the day, collabs in any gacha game usually never ever rerun ever again, especially if you have been playing HSR as your first and only gacha game. A collab banner in any gacha games, they'll probably never ever rerun because they are arrangements between two separate companies, right? So with Saber being the only banner, since Archer is gonna be given out for free, and there is a very high possibility that they are gonna be launching the Idolence as well as Signature Light Cone for Saber and Archer, because we do have an Archer banner as well. Do consider if it's going to be worth it for vertical or horizontal investments in patch 3.3, when 3.4 may be the only time ever that you can get these collab units. Now, we do know for a fact that number one, your PT does not carry over into these collab units, and number two, the collab banners themselves, they last for a extended period of time longer than your normal banner rates, which means that they may be lasting 1 or maybe even 2 patches long, so there could be a little bit more time to save. But generally speaking, I would rather be safe than to be sorry, because for both Hyacine and Cipher, they can always rerun, but Archer and Saber, they are probably never going to be coming back. So looking forward to the early access server to take a look into the closer insight for both Hyacine as well as Cipher itself. We are also going to be taking a look at the brand new Relic 4 piece that's going to be announced from the live stream. So look forward to that as well next year. So with that, we have come to the end of this very quick and summarized, concise CM pulling opinions for Hyacine, Cipher, the reruns, and what to prepare for going forward into the future, right? So word of the day is gonna be Fate. Join Twitch, join YouTube, join Discord, join Twitter, join Twitter. All the best for Gacha Boost, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.